The Echoes of Marathon. Chapter 1. The Plains of Marathon. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the vast plains of Marathon. A gentle breeze whispered through the tall grasses, which swayed like the sea under the wind's caress. The landscape, serene and timeless, was marred only by the distant glint of bronze and iron, where thousands of soldiers stood poised for battle. The tranquility of the morning was a stark contrast to the tension that permeated the air, a calm before the storm. Nikias stood among his fellow Athenians, his hand gripping the spear with a mixture of anxiety and determination. The young soldier's heart raced, each beat echoing the unspoken fears and hopes of the men around him. He could hear the murmur of hushed conversations, prayers to the gods, and the occasional bark of a commander issuing final orders. The smell of sweat and leather mingled with the earthy scent of the plains, grounding him in the reality of the moment. In the distance, the enemy camp loomed, a sprawling mass of Persian warriors and their imposing fleet anchored along the shoreline. The Persians had come in great numbers, their intent clear, to crush Athens and assert their dominance over Greece. The sheer size of their force was daunting, a dark wave threatening to engulf the defenders. Nikias glanced to his left, where his mentor, Themistocles, stood with a stoic expression. Themistocles, a seasoned warrior with a sharp mind, had been a pillar of strength for the young soldier. His presence was reassuring, a reminder that they were not alone in this fight. Themistocles caught Nikias's eye and offered a slight nod, a silent encouragement that bolstered his resolve. The Athenians were not without allies. Beside them stood the warriors of Plataea, a small but resolute force that had answered Athens' call for aid. Their solidarity in the face of such a formidable enemy was a testament to the bonds of kinship and the shared desire to protect their homeland from the Persian yoke. The Athenian leaders, with Miltiades at the forefront, convened for a final strategic discussion. Nikias couldn't hear their words, but he could see the gravity of the moment reflected in their faces. They spoke of tactics and terrain, of leveraging their knowledge of the land against the superior numbers of the invaders. Every man knew that their survival depended on the success of these plans. As the sun continued its descent, casting an orange glow over the plains, a hush fell over the Greek camp. It was a silence filled with anticipation, fear, and a fierce determination. Nikias tightened his grip on his spear, feeling the rough wood against his palm, a tangible connection to his purpose. He took a deep breath, drawing in the scents and sounds of the battlefield. This was the moment he had trained for, the moment that would define him and his city. The looming threat of the Persian invasion hung over them like a dark cloud, but within that shadow there was a spark of hope. The battle was about to begin, and with it, the echoes of Marathon would reverberate through history. Chapter 2. The Soldiers of Marathon. Nikias was a young man of 20, his frame lean but strong from years of rigorous training. His eyes, dark and intense, reflected both his youth and the burden of the moment. Born to a modest family in Athens, he had always dreamed of glory on the battlefield, spurred on by the tales of heroism sung by the bards. Yet now, standing on the plains of Marathon with war imminent, he couldn't suppress the gnawing fear that churned in his stomach. Nikias had joined the Athenian army out of a sense of duty and the desire to protect his home. His father, a potter, had always stressed the importance of defending their way of life, but it was his mother's stories of the legendary warriors of old that had truly ignited his passion. Despite his bravado, the reality of war was far different from his boyhood fantasies. He had seen comrades fall in training, and the brutal truth of what awaited them weighed heavily on his mind. Among the ranks of the Athenian soldiers stood Themistocles, a man whose presence commanded respect. His face was weathered, marked by the scars of countless battles, and his eyes held a wisdom that came from years of experience. Themistocles was not just a warrior, he was a strategist, a thinker who could see beyond the immediate chaos of combat to the larger picture. Themistocles had taken Nikias under his wing, seeing potential in the young soldier's eagerness and determination. He had taught Nikias not just the skills of battle, but also the importance of discipline and patience. Courage is not the absence of fear, he often said, but the mastery of it. These words resonated deeply with Nikias, offering him strength in moments of doubt. As they stood together on the eve of battle, Themistocles placed a reassuring hand on Nikias's shoulder. "Remember your training," he said softly, his voice steady and calm. "Trust in your comrades and in yourself. We fight not just for our lives, but for the future of Athens." Across the plains, the Persian camp was a hive of activity. In the midst of it all stood Artaphernes, a Persian commander known for his tactical prowess and ruthless efficiency. Tall and imposing, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that seemed to pierce through anyone he looked at, Artaphernes was a man who inspired both fear and respect among his troops. Despite his formidable reputation, Artaphernes harbored a degree of overconfidence. He saw the Greeks as disorganized and inferior, a belief that had been reinforced by the sheer size and strength of the Persian Empire. To him, this campaign was but another step in the grand expansion of Persian dominance. Beside Artaphernes was Ardashir, a younger officer who admired the commander but harbored his own doubts about underestimating the Greeks. Ardashir had heard tales of Greek valor and was wary of the enemy's resilience and cunning. However, in the rigid hierarchy of the Persian army, questioning a superior was not only discouraged but dangerous. As the sun set, casting long shadows over both camps, the contrast between the two sides became stark. On one side, the Greeks, driven by the desire to protect their homeland and preserve their freedom. On the other, the Persians, vast in number and driven by ambition and the command of their king. Themistocles turned to Nikias once more, sensing the young soldier's anxiety. "We fight for more than ourselves," he reminded him. "Our ancestors watch over us, and our children's futures depend on our courage today." Nikias nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. As night fell over the plains of Marathon, the stage was set for a confrontation that would echo through the ages, a testament to the courage and resolve of those who dared to stand against the tide. Chapter 3. The Crucible of Conflict. As darkness enveloped the plains of Marathon, the campfires of the Athenian and Plataean forces flickered like stars against the night sky. Nikias sat on a flat stone, his spear laid across his lap, and his mind raced with conflicting emotions. The cool night air did little to calm his churning thoughts. He had always imagined battle as a glorious endeavor, a stage for heroes to prove their mettle. But now, on the cusp of real combat, he felt the weight of fear pressing down on him. The faces of his comrades, etched with similar worry, reflected the reality that many might not see another sunrise. Nikias clenched his fists, feeling the rough texture of the spear's shaft bite into his palms. He longed to prove himself, to show that he was more than just a young dreamer. But the fear of failure, of letting down his city and his family, gnawed at his resolve. What if he wasn't strong enough? What if he couldn't protect those he loved? His thoughts drifted to his parents. His father, always stern but proud, and his mother, whose stories of ancient heroes had fueled his imagination. He couldn't bear the thought of them mourning his loss, of becoming just another name on a long list of the fallen. Themistocles, sensing Nikias's turmoil, approached him. The older warrior sat beside him, not speaking at first, just sharing the silence of the night. After a while, he broke the quiet with a calm, steady voice. "Fear is natural, Nikias," Themistocles said. "It reminds us that we are alive, that what we fight for is important. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to face it." Nikias nodded, drawing strength from his mentor's words. He realized that his desire to prove himself, his loyalty to Athens, and his fear were all intertwined. He needed to channel his emotions into determination. He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity. His path was set. In a makeshift tent illuminated by oil lamps, the Athenian leaders gathered around a rough wooden table. The air was thick with tension as they discussed their strategy. Miltiades, their appointed commander, stood at the head, his expression grave but resolute. "We face a formidable foe," Miltiades began, his voice steady. "The Persians outnumber us significantly, and their cavalry and archers give them an advantage in open combat. But we have the advantage of terrain and surprise." He spread out a map of the Marathon plain, pointing to key locations. "We cannot meet them in a head-on clash. Instead, we will use their numbers against them. We will form our phalanx with a weak center and strong flanks. When they advance, they will think they are breaking our line, but we will encircle them." The leaders murmured their agreement, but the plan was not without its risks. The success of the strategy hinged on perfect execution and the discipline of the troops. Themistocles spoke up, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "We must also consider their fleet. If we engage the Persians here and fail, they may move to Athens unopposed. We need to leave enough forces behind to defend the city, or we risk losing everything." Miltiades nodded. "Agreed. We will leave a contingent behind to guard Athens. The rest of us will give everything we have here at Marathon. Victory here could demoralize the Persians and force a retreat." Nikias, listening from outside the tent, felt a surge of hope. The plan was bold, but it played to their strengths. Themistocles' words about courage echoed in his mind. This was their chance to turn the tide, to show the Persians that Athens would not bow. As the leaders finalized their plans, Nikias returned to his comrades, sharing what he had heard. The mood in the camp shifted from trepidation to a steely resolve. They knew the risks, but they also knew the stakes. The night wore on, and the Athenian camp settled into an uneasy rest. Nikias lay on the ground, staring up at the stars, feeling the weight of his fear and hope intertwining. Tomorrow he would face his doubts on the battlefield. Tomorrow he would fight for Athens, for his family, and for the glory that had always seemed so distant. Chapter 4. The Gathering Storm. The dawn broke over the plains of Marathon, casting a pale light over the assembled forces. The Athenian camp was a hive of activity as soldiers made their final preparations. The clink of metal and the murmur of voices filled the air, a symphony of determination and dread. Nikias moved among his comrades, feeling the palpable tension. He tightened the straps of his armor, making sure every piece was secure. His hands trembled slightly as he sharpened his spear, the repetitive motion soothing his nerves. Around him, others were doing the same, each man lost in his own thoughts and rituals. Small groups of soldiers gathered to offer prayers to the gods. They raised their hands to the sky, calling upon Zeus for strength, Athena for wisdom, and Ares for courage in the coming battle. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense and the solemnity of their invocations. Nikias joined them, his voice blending with the others in a fervent plea for divine favor. In quieter corners, farewells were exchanged. Friends clasped each other's shoulders, offering words of encouragement and promises to meet again. Some soldiers wrote messages to their families, letters that might never be delivered. Nikias thought of his parents, of their faces, and the life he hoped to return to. He found Themistocles and embraced him, drawing strength from the older warrior's unwavering resolve. As the final preparations were made, the camp fell into an eerie silence. The Athenians formed their ranks, the hoplites standing shoulder to shoulder, their shields overlapping to form an impenetrable wall. They were ready. Across the plain, the Persian army stirred. Their sheer numbers were daunting, a sea of soldiers stretching to the horizon. The Persians, confident in their numerical superiority, prepared for what they believed would be a swift and decisive victory. Artaphernes, their commander, observed the Athenian lines with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. He saw them as a minor obstacle, one that would soon be swept away by the might of Persia. The initial skirmishes began as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Persian archers advanced, loosing volleys of arrows that darkened the air. The Athenian shields held firm, the hoplites bracing themselves against the impact. The sound of arrows striking bronze was like a relentless drumbeat, a reminder of the storm that was about to break. Nikias felt the tension in his gut tighten. Each arrow that thudded into a shield or the ground was a stark reminder of the danger they faced. Yet, amidst the fear, there was also a growing sense of defiance. They had trained for this, and they would not break. Themistocles moved along the lines, offering words of encouragement. "Hold your ground," he called out. "Remember our plan. Trust in each other and in our strategy. Today we fight for our freedom and our future." The Persians, sensing an opportunity, sent forward their light infantry to probe the Athenian defenses. The Greeks met them with disciplined ferocity, their spears thrusting in unison, repelling the initial assault. The clash of metal and the cries of the wounded filled the air, a prelude to the greater conflict that loomed. Psychological warfare played a crucial role in these early exchanges. The Athenians knew that their survival depended on maintaining their composure and cohesion. They shouted defiantly at the advancing Persians, banging their shields and taunting the enemy. The Persians responded in kind, their commanders urging them forward, confident that sheer force would prevail. Nikias found himself in the thick of the fray, his spear clashing against Persian shields and armor. The fear he had felt earlier was still there, but it had transformed into a fierce determination. He fought not just for himself, but for Athens, for his comrades, and for the hope of victory. As the initial skirmishes subsided, both sides drew back, assessing the situation. The Persians, having underestimated the Greek resolve, began to regroup for a more coordinated assault. The Athenians, their ranks still holding strong, prepared for the next wave. The tension was palpable, the air thick with the anticipation of the full-scale battle to come. The sun climbed higher, casting harsh shadows across the plain, and both armies knew that the decisive moment was fast approaching. Nikias looked to Themistocles, who met his gaze with a reassuring nod. They had held their ground so far, but the real test was yet to come. As the two armies stood on the brink, the fate of Athens hung in the balance, and the echoes of Marathon awaited their place in history. Chapter 5. The Clash of Titans. The sun was high in the sky when the signal to advance was given. The Athenians and their Plataean allies surged forward, their shields locked together, forming an unbroken wall of bronze. The ground trembled beneath their feet, a testament to the determination and unity of the Greek phalanx. Nikias was in the front ranks, his heart pounding in his chest. He focused on Themistocles' words, drawing strength from his mentor's unwavering confidence. As they closed the distance to the Persian lines, the sound of battle grew deafening. The clash of weapons, the cries of the wounded, and the shouts of commanders filled the air. The Persian archers released another volley of arrows, but the Greek shields held firm. Nikias could feel the impact as the arrows struck, but he kept his focus forward. As they neared the enemy, The Athenians broke into a charge, their war cries rising above the din of battle. The two armies collided with a tremendous force. Nikias thrust his spear forward, meeting the Persian shields with a fierce determination. The initial impact was chaotic, a maelstrom of bodies and weapons. He fought with a mixture of skill and desperation, each moment a struggle for survival. Around him the battle raged. Themistocles moved with the grace of a veteran warrior, cutting down enemies with precision. Nikias saw comrades fall, but he also witnessed acts of incredible bravery. Men fought with a ferocity born of the desire to protect their homeland, their families, and their way of life. In the thick of the fighting, Nikias found himself face to face with a Persian warrior, their eyes locking in a moment of mutual recognition. The Persian swung his sword, but Nikias parried the blow and countered with a thrust of his spear. The Persian fell, and Nikias felt a surge of triumph, quickly tempered by the realization that the battle was far from over. As the battle wore on, the Athenian strategy began to unfold. The center of the Greek line, deliberately weakened, started to give way under the pressure of the Persian assault. The Persians, sensing victory, pressed forward, eager to break through the Greek lines. Nikias, positioned on the left flank, saw the plan in action. The Greek flanks, stronger and more resilient, began to curve inward, enveloping the advancing Persians. Themistocles shouted orders, directing the maneuver with precision. The Persians, caught in the trap, found themselves surrounded. Nikias fought with renewed vigor, his fear giving way to a fierce resolve. He moved through the enemy ranks, striking with his spear and shield, each movement driven by a deep-seated determination. He saw the confusion and panic spreading among the Persian soldiers as they realized their predicament. The Athenians pressed their advantage, using their knowledge of the terrain and their superior tactics to turn the tide of the battle. The Persians, despite their numbers, began to falter. The disciplined Greek phalanx, with its tight formation and coordinated movements, proved overwhelming. Nikias found himself in the midst of a crucial moment. A Persian commander, Artaphernes, was rallying his troops, trying to restore order. Nikias knew that if Artaphernes succeeded, the Persians could regroup and counterattack. Summoning all his courage, Nikias charged toward the commander. The fight was intense. Artaphernes was a skilled warrior, and their clash was a blur of steel and determination. Nikias took a glancing blow to his arm, but managed to deflect the worst of it with his shield. With a final desperate thrust, he drove his spear into Artaphernes, ending the commander's resistance. The fall of Artaphernes marked a turning point. The Persian lines began to collapse, their soldiers retreating in disarray. The Athenians, sensing victory, pushed forward with relentless force. The battle, which had hung in the balance, now swung decisively in favor of the Greeks. Nikias, bloodied and exhausted, looked around at the battlefield. The Persians were fleeing, and the Greeks were cheering, their cries of victory echoing across the plains. He had faced his fears, proved his mettle, and survived. As the dust settled, the magnitude of their achievement began to sink in. The Battle of Marathon would be remembered not just for the victory, but for the courage and resilience of those who had fought. Nikias stood among his comrades, his heart swelling with pride and relief. They had defended their homeland, and their victory would resonate through history. Chapter 6. The Aftermath of Victory. The sounds of battle gradually faded, replaced by the triumphant shouts of the victorious Greeks. The plains of Marathon, once a scene of chaos and bloodshed, now bore witness to the jubilant celebration of the Athenian and Plataean soldiers. They had faced a formidable enemy and emerged victorious. The Persian forces, broken and demoralized, retreated towards their ships, leaving behind the detritus of war. Nikias stood amidst his comrades, his body aching from the exertion of battle, but his spirit soaring with the euphoria of victory. He could scarcely believe they had done it. Around him, soldiers embraced each other, their faces alight with joy and relief. The weight of fear and anticipation had lifted, replaced by the realization that they had defended their homeland and their way of life. Themistocles approached, a proud smile on his weathered face. "We did it, Nikias," he said, clapping the young soldier on the shoulder. "You fought bravely today. Athens will remember this victory for generations." Nikias nodded, feeling a swell of pride. He had faced his fears and proven himself in the crucible of battle. The sense of accomplishment was profound, tempered only by the awareness of the sacrifices that had been made. As the initial exhilaration began to wane, the sobering reality of their victory set in. The battlefield was littered with the fallen, both Greek and Persian. The Athenians moved among the bodies, identifying their comrades and marking the Persian dead for later burial. The cost of their triumph was starkly evident in the lifeless forms that lay scattered across the plain. Nikias joined his fellow soldiers in the grim task of counting the dead. Each face he recognized brought a pang of sorrow. Friends he had trained with, laughed with, and fought alongside now lay still, their lives cut short in the service of their city. He knelt beside one such friend, placing a hand on his cold shoulder and whispering a silent farewell. The Athenians gathered the bodies of their fallen comrades, laying them out with reverence and respect. They spoke quietly, sharing memories and offering comfort to one another. The victory had come at a great cost, and the recognition of their sacrifices deepened the sense of solemn pride. Miltiades, their commander, addressed the troops. His voice carried the weight of both sorrow and triumph. "We have achieved a great victory today, but let us not forget the price we have paid. These men gave their lives for Athens, for our freedom, and for the generations that will follow. Honor their memory, and let their sacrifice inspire us to build a future worthy of their courage." The soldiers nodded in solemn agreement. They knew that the true measure of their victory would be in how they honored the fallen and upheld the values for which they had fought. The battlefield, now quiet, held the echoes of their struggle and the promise of their enduring legacy. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the plains, the Greeks gathered to celebrate their hard-won victory. Fires were lit, and food and wine were shared. The mood was a mixture of joy and contemplation, a time to remember the past and look forward to the future. Nikias sat with Themistocles and his surviving comrades, their spirits lifted by the camaraderie and the shared experience of battle. They spoke of the future, of returning home, and of the lives they would rebuild. Themistocles, ever the strategist, also spoke of the challenges that lay ahead, reminding them that their victory was just one step in the ongoing struggle for freedom and security. The night wore on, and the stars emerged, shining brightly over the plains of Marathon. Nikias looked up, feeling a sense of connection to the generations of Athenians who had come before him and those who would follow. He had faced his fears, proven his mettle, and honored his city. The battle had forged him into a warrior, but it had also taught him the value of peace and the importance of remembering the sacrifices that had made their victory possible. As he lay back on the ground, staring up at the night sky, Nikias felt a deep sense of peace. The echoes of Marathon would resonate through history, a testament to the courage and resilience of those who had fought. And in the quiet of the night, amidst the afterglow of victory and the memory of sacrifice, he found a renewed sense of purpose and hope for the future. Chapter 7. the legacy of Marathon. In the days following the battle, the Athenian soldiers returned to their city as heroes. The streets of Athens were lined with jubilant citizens, cheering and celebrating the victory that had secured their freedom. Nikias walked among his comrades, his head held high, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment that he had never known before. The young soldier had transformed over the course of the campaign. The fearful youth who had once doubted his own courage now stood as a seasoned warrior, respected by his peers and honored by his city. The journey had been arduous, filled with moments of doubt and fear, but it had forged him into a man of strength and resolve. At home, his parents welcomed him with open arms. His father, the potter, looked at him with a mixture of pride and relief. His mother, who had filled his childhood with tales of ancient heroes, now saw her own son as one of those legends. They celebrated his return, but there was also a solemn acknowledgment of the cost of war, a reminder of the friends and comrades who had not come back. Nikias spent time reflecting on the significance of their victory. He visited the graves of his fallen comrades, paying his respects and offering prayers for their souls. The Battle of Marathon had been a defining moment not only for him but for all of Athens. It had proven that they could stand against a powerful empire, that their courage and unity could overcome even the greatest of challenges. He also spent time with Themistocles, discussing the battle and its implications. Themistocles, ever the strategist, spoke of the lessons learned and the need to prepare for future threats. "This victory is just the beginning," he said. "We have shown our strength, but we must remain vigilant. The Persians will not forget this defeat." The impact of the Battle of Marathon resonated far beyond the immediate aftermath. It became a symbol of Greek unity and resilience, a testament to the power of a free people defending their homeland. The victory at Marathon was not just a military success, it was a moral and psychological triumph that inspired all of Greece. The story of Marathon was told and retold, becoming a cornerstone of Athenian identity. It served as a reminder of what could be achieved through courage, strategy, and solidarity. The victory also had a profound effect on the Greek world, bolstering the confidence of other city-states and fostering a sense of shared purpose in the face of external threats. Nikias found himself becoming a part of this legacy. He was celebrated not only as a soldier, but as a symbol of the Athenian spirit. His experiences and growth were a microcosm of the transformation that Athens itself had undergone. From a city that had faced the threat of annihilation, Athens emerged stronger, more united, and more determined to protect its values and way of life. As the years passed, the memory of Marathon continued to shape the course of Greek history. Themistocles and other leaders used the victory as a rallying cry to build stronger defenses, including the construction of a powerful navy that would later prove crucial in the wars to come. Athens entered a period of growth and cultural flourishing, its confidence bolstered by the knowledge that they had faced and defeated a mighty empire. Nikias continued to serve his city, not just as a warrior, but as a mentor to younger soldiers. He shared his experiences, teaching them the lessons he had learned from Themistocles and from the battle itself. He emphasized the importance of courage, unity, and the willingness to face one's fears for the greater good. The victory at Marathon was a pivotal moment, but it was not the end of Athens' struggles. The Persians, humiliated by their defeat, would return with even greater forces, leading to the epic confrontations of the Persian Wars. The lessons learned at Marathon would guide Athens in these future battles, helping to forge a legacy of resilience and determination that would echo through the ages. As Nikias looked to the future, he knew that the challenges ahead would be formidable. But he also knew that the spirit of Marathon, the courage and unity that had carried them to victory, would continue to guide Athens. They had proven that they could stand against the mightiest of foes, and that knowledge would be their greatest strength in the battles to come. Epilogue. Echoes of history. Years had passed since the Battle of Marathon, and Athens had grown in both strength and wisdom. The city's walls stood taller, and its people walked with a sense of pride and purpose. The victories that followed Marathon had cemented Athens' place in history as a beacon of democracy and resilience. Nikias, now an older man, stood before a group of young Athenians in the Agora, the heart of the city where citizens gathered to discuss matters of state and philosophy. His hair had turned silver, and his face bore the lines of time and experience. Yet, his eyes still sparkled with the fire of the warrior he had once been. The children, wide-eyed and eager, sat in a semicircle around him, hanging on his every word. They had heard tales of Marathon from their parents and grandparents, but today they would hear it from someone who had stood in the thick of battle, someone who had faced the Persians and lived to tell the tale. Nikias began his story, his voice steady and clear. "It was a day much like this one," he said, "when the sun rose over the plains of Marathon. We were fewer in number, but our hearts were strong, and our resolve was unbreakable. The Persians had come to crush us, to make us bow to their will, but we Athenians stood firm." He recounted the preparations, the prayers to the gods, and the final moments of calm before the storm. He described the clash of armies, the sounds of battle, and the smell of sweat and blood. The children listened in rapt attention, their imaginations painting vivid pictures of the scenes Nikias described. "When the battle was at its fiercest," he continued, "we remembered the plan of Miltiades, and we held our ground. Our center gave way just enough to lure the Persians in, and then we struck from the flanks, surrounding them. It was a turning point, a moment when our unity and strategy triumphed over sheer numbers." Nikias paused, looking at the young faces before him. "But remember this," he said softly, "victory came at a great cost. Many of our bravest fell that day, sacrificing their lives so that we could live in freedom. We must honor their memory by living lives worthy of their sacrifice." He spoke of Themistocles and the other leaders, of their wisdom and foresight in preparing for future battles. He shared his own journey from a fearful youth to a seasoned warrior, emphasizing the lessons he had learned about courage, loyalty, and the importance of standing together in the face of adversity. As he finished his tale, Nikias looked at the children, seeing in them the future of Athens. "The echoes of Marathon are not just stories," he said. "They are a part of who we are. They remind us that we can overcome any challenge if we stand united and face our fears with courage. Remember the lessons of Marathon, and let them guide you in the days to come." The children applauded, their faces shining with admiration and inspiration. They had heard the story of Marathon many times, but hearing it from Nikias made it real, tangible, and deeply personal. As the crowd dispersed, Nikias stood for a moment, looking out over the city he had fought to protect. The memories of battle and the faces of fallen comrades were never far from his mind, but they were now tempered by the knowledge that their sacrifices had paved the way for a brighter future. He walked through the Agora, feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment. The legacy of Marathon lived on, not just in the history books, but in the hearts and minds of the people of Athens. It was a legacy of courage, unity, and resilience, a testament to the enduring spirit of a city that had faced the might of an empire and emerged victorious. And so, the echoes of Marathon continued to reverberate through the ages, a reminder of what could be achieved when people stood together and fought for what they believed in. The story of Nikias and his comrades would be told and retold, inspiring generations to come to uphold the values that had defined their victory and shaped their destiny.